very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Kampi. We start off our show tonight with the biggest news coming in from Russia. The country's state media has reported that Alexei Navalny is dead. That's right, the most outspoken domestic critic of the Russian President Vladimir Putin is no more. He breathed his last in a jail in Kharkiv, where he was serving a long sentence. The Federal Prison Service saying that Navalny collapsed and lost consciousness after taking a walk. It further claims the medical staff arrived immediately and an ambulance team was also called. Apparently, all necessary measures were taken, but the doctors soon declared him dead. He was only 47 years old. What exactly is the Kremlin saying? It claims that it had no information on the cause of Navalny's death and that it is for the doctors to find out. However, Navalny's press secretary, Kira Yarmish, is saying that his team had not been informed of his death. Navalny's lawyers have now flown to his prison colony in Kharkiv. Just 48 hours ago, Navalny tweeted this on the platform X, formerly Twitter. He spoke of spending 15 days in a punishment cell, that too for the fourth time in less than 2 months. And reports are also saying that he managed to put out a post on his Telegram channel. It was a tribute to his wife, Yulia. Both the posts were made 2 days ago. That's on Valentine's Day. And now the Russian activist is no more. Soon after getting the news, his wife spoke at the Munich Security Conference. She was welcomed with a long-standing ovation. Listen to this.
You've probably all seen the terrible news coming in today. I thought for a long time whether I should come out here or fly straight to my children. But then I thought about what Alexei would do in my place. And I'm sure he'd be here. He'd be on this stage. But if this is true, I want Putin and all of his entourage, Putin's friends and his government, to know that they will all be held accountable for what they have done to our country, to my family and to my husband. And that day will come very soon. And I want to call on the entire world community, everyone in this room and people around the world, that we come together to unite and defeat this evil, defeat the horrific regime that is now in Russia.
And with me on the broadcast is someone who can better help us understand these developments. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast, Fred, who is a journalist and political commentator with us from Moscow. Let me just begin by asking you for your initial reaction to the news of Alexei Navalny's death, and what do you think really happened?
Well, of course, I was shocked. It was shaping up to be a quiet day. I was going to shovel snow because we've had tons of it lately, and suddenly this happened, and it is characteristic, you know, of the Navalny story that unexpected things happen to him. He has been dealt with, as it were, by the Russian state machinery, put in prison after court cases and charges. He was excluded from the ballot. I mean, all these are predictable things that a repressive state does with its challengers. But then these bizarre things happened to him. His poisoning in 2020 by Novichok, and now this. These are not scripted types of repression. They're not convenient for Putin, I shouldn't think, because they make him look bad. I mean, he look bad anyway, but these make Russia look unpredictable in cruel ways, ungoverned in ways that don't benefit Putin. And that is, you know, part of the Navalny story, this ragged edge to his political career that got him into these weird situations, and now this untimely death. It is just beyond. You know, I don't know what to say about it, but it definitely focuses minds and creates an enormous amount of discussion about the nature of Putin's Russia.
And what do you make of the reaction that's come in from the Kremlin so far?
Well, I'm guessing that they were blindsided by it. I don't think that Putin ordered Navalny's death or something as simple as that. Something much more complicated goes on, and that's the scary thing about Russia today. You know, these unexplained deaths, and from Putin's point of view, unnecessary murders and this death. These things are simply inexplicable, even in terms of you know, authoritarian repressive state dealing with people who are in opposition to it. This makes no sense. And so I'm guessing that the Kremlin's reaction was much like mine, confused and baffled, and they probably want to get to the bottom of it. But there is no avoiding the fact that whatever happened, Vladimir Putin owns it. He is president of this country, and he does set the stage and the framework within which things happen. And so he's going to have to answer at some point about this.
So a lot of question marks, certainly, as you're pointing out, Fred, but do you see any of those answers emerging anytime soon?
Well, I'm guessing there will be an explanation coming forward. I mean, there is an investigation, an official investigation underway as we speak, and they will deliver some sort of perhaps even very detailed explanation about what happened. But I'm guessing most people won't believe it, and that this mystery about Alexei Navalny's death, as so many things in his life, will remain, and they will remain as nagging doubts and worries about the nature of power in Russia.
We also heard from Alexei Navalny's wife just a short while after that news came out. What was your reaction to what she said, and also the fact that she spoke out just hours after the news emerged?
Well, I think that in the family circles and supporters of Navalny, they still are disbelieving of this news. It is sudden and unexpected, and he was, by all accounts, a relatively healthy and relatively young man. So you have every reason to be suspicious, but I guess it's sinking in. She seemed, I mean, from what she said at the Munich Security Conference, she seemed to believe it, and did the political thing, as she said, what her husband would have done, to step up and say her piece. So it's not a surprise, and I think everybody has to admire her courage and her guts, and feel sorry for the family in the first place, that this can't be an easy thing. And also for many Navalny supporters, many of whom I know personally, they really thought he was a great man, a courageous, honest, steadfast person who didn't ever shy away from a confrontation. That's what got him where he was and now is. But it also means his legend, I guess, will continue.
We're leaving it there for the moment, Fred. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast.
Thank you.
Alexei Navalny had for long been a thorn for the Kremlin. He started out as a lawyer, but soon became Russia's most prominent opposition leader. He carried out corruption exposés, campaigned against the ruling United Russia Party, and led some of the biggest anti-government protests that have been seen in Russia. When demonstrations against Putin flared in December 2011 after an election embroiled in fraud accusations, Navalny was one of the first protest leaders arrested. He brought out tens of thousands of Russians to the streets, despite Russia's harsh anti-protest laws. It was Navalny who investigated Putin's inner circle and shared the findings in slick videos on YouTube, garnering hundreds of millions of views. In fact, in the year 2020, Navalny fell into a coma after being poisoned in Siberia. He was too ill to be moved, but later doctors cleared him to fly. Navalny was on a flight from Siberia to Russia with his wife when his health rapidly worsened, but the pilot made an emergency landing and saved his life. And soon Navalny was flown to Berlin for treatment. It was found out that he had been poisoned by Novichok, a neurotoxin developed in the Soviet era. The Kremlin once again denied involvement. A joint media investigation revealed a team of assassins from Russia's FSB security service behind the poisoning, but Putin dismissed it, saying if someone had wanted to poison him, they would have finished him off, quote unquote. However, Navalny recovered and he decided to return to Russia in January 2021. He was lauded for his bravery, but it was only a matter of time before he landed into the Kremlin's clutches once again. Upon his return, Navalny was swiftly arrested and sentenced to his first of several jail terms. He was handed 11.5 years in jail for fraud and extremism. And last year, his sentence was further extended by 19 years. He faced 6 counts, including inciting and financing extremism, creating an illegal NGO, the rehabilitation of Nazism, and inciting children to dangerous acts. He rejected the charges as being politically motivated. Navalny was ordered to be jailed in a special prison regime. It limited his ability, basically, to meet the visitors or write or receive letters for years. He had limited contact with the outer world. Navalny's fate had been doomed. Last year in December, he disappeared from the Vladimir region of central Russia, where he was serving his jail term at the time. His lawyer or his team could not contact him for a better part of the month. Even the UN raised concern over violations of human rights. After nearly 3 weeks of lost contact, Navalny was located at a prison colony in Krap near the Arctic Circle. The region is notorious for long and severe winters. It's almost impossible to get to this penal colony or to even send letters there. Navalny's strategist said that this was the highest possible level of isolation from the world. And now, not even 2 months had gone by that Navalny has been reported dead. The pattern seems to continue. In today's Russia, one cannot afford to be on President Putin's bad side. Let's now also look at how the world has reacted to the news of Navalny's death. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris has said that there is no doubt that Russia is responsible for Navalny's death.
We've all just received reports that Alexei Navalny has died in Russia. This is, of course, terrible news, which we are working to confirm. My prayers are with his family, including his wife, Yulia, who is with us today. And if confirmed, this would be a further sign of Putin's brutality. Whatever story they tell, let us be clear, Russia is responsible. And we will have more to say on this later.
The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinkin spoke about Navalny's death on the sidelines of the Munich Security Conference. And without beating around the bush, Blinkin held the Russian leadership responsible for Navalny's death.
The Russian government and Putin have persecuted, poisoned, and imprisoned Alexei Navalny. And now, the reports of his death. First and foremost, if these reports are accurate, our hearts go out to his wife and to his family. Beyond that, his death in a Russian prison and the fixation and fear of one man only underscores the weakness and rot at the heart of the system that Putin has built. Russia's responsible for this.
And the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz spoke about his meeting with Navalny during a news conference in Berlin. Scholz said Navalny paid the price for his courage.
In einem russischen Gefängnis.
But we now, if we didn't already, know exactly what kind of regime this is. Anyone who voices criticism, who stands up for democracy, must fear for their safety and their lives. And that is why we are all very depressed. We feel with the family, the wife and child, and all the relatives and friends.
The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, was jointly addressing that press conference, and he did not shy away from pointing the finger at his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin.
Obviously, he was killed by Putin, like thousands of others who have been tormented or tortured because of this one person.
Strong words of criticism pointed at Russia also poured in from NATO's Secretary General and Poland's former ambassador to Russia. Listen in.
What we have seen is that Russia has become a more and more authoritarian power, that they have used oppression against opposition for many years. And of course, he was in jail, he was a prisoner, and that makes it extremely important that Russia now answer all the questions that will be asked about the cause of the death.
This is Putin's personal revenge. Putin took revenge on someone who dared to criticize him, who, in Putin's opinion, dared to insult him and simply murdered Navalny.
And the ordinary people of Moscow as well have a lot to say. Some believe Navalny's death is not political. There are some who believe Navalny was among the enemies of Russia. And then there are others who say Navalny's death was expected.
We read that it was a clot that broke off. Anything can happen in life. I think it is fate. Honestly, it is not political or anything. I think it is a shame.
I have a common human reaction when someone dies, especially in prison. It's not good. Locked up, no freedom, no family, no wife. Of course, one can only express grief. It shouldn't be like that.
It was expected, I guess. The news said he was being kept in bad conditions that weren't fit to live in.
The EU chief diplomat Josep Borrell has put out a strongly worded post on the platform X. It reads, and I'm quoting, "Let's be clear, this is Putin's sole responsibility." The Prime Ministers of Sweden, Spain and Norway have also posted about Navalny's death, with the Norwegian Prime Minister saying that Navalny will be remembered for his quote-unquote relentless fight against the abuse of power. There is no doubt that Navalny's death will have a ripple effect, and criticism against Russia is already flowing in. In fact, sanctions may follow. Let's remind you that Alexei Navalny was all of 47 years old, and he was Putin's fiercest domestic critic. Each day, we bring you news and images of the conflicts raging on planet Earth. But there is a different kind of a battle, and one hardly less dangerous, that is underway in the skies. The skies are swarmed with satellites, but now Russia is planning to up the ante. How exactly? Well, it's up to something troubling. According to US intelligence, it is developing a secret space weapon, and concerns are, is it a nuclear one? That's the big question. The US National Security spokesperson, John Kirby, stopped short of saying that. But what he did say was the weapon is space-based and that it violates the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. Listen to this.
It would be space-based, and it would be a violation of the Outer Space Treaty, to which more than 130 countries have signed up to, including Russia.
Now, this treaty basically prohibits the deployment of nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction in space. So if Russia's secret weapon is breaking these rules, what does that mean? The US has tried to hush up the nuclear component. Kirby says he cannot elaborate on the specific nature of the threat. In fact, the White House did not even plan to make this knowledge public. It was forced to comment after a Republican lawmaker's remarks. Just a day earlier, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Turner, ignited a firestorm at Capitol Hill. He announced that his panel had information of a serious national security threat. He also called on the Biden administration to declassify the information. This obviously sent alarm bells ringing. The White House was infuriated. And since then, it has tried to downplay the entire situation. And why is that? Well, maybe it's trying to protect its crucial sources of intelligence in Russia. Anyway, now the sensitive information is out in the open. What do the experts then have to say? Well, they also think that Russia's new weapon could be a nuclear-powered device, not necessarily to cause mass destruction on planet Earth, but to create trouble in space. And this, by the way, includes blinding, jamming, or frying the electronics inside satellites. You heard that right. You see, threatening satellites could cause all sorts of mischief. They can be used to disrupt communications, for surveillance, for intelligence, and for military command and control. When Russia deploys its new space weapon, it is going to pose challenges for the United States, to say the least, because it does not have the capability to counter such a weapon and defend its satellites as of now. And it only has a limited window of time to actually develop a counter. And what is America doing about this then? It is in the middle of testing a new approach because the Russian threat is neither new nor surprising. Concerns about placing nuclear weapons in space go back 50 years. In response, the US is developing a proliferated warfighter space architecture. Instead of focusing on safeguarding its satellites, Washington basically is aiming to blanket low Earth orbit with hundreds of smaller and cheaper satellites. It's quite similar to what Elon Musk's Starlink communication system does. And the idea here is, even if enemies of the US could knock out some of its satellites, or let's say even more than a dozen of them, the system could still keep operating by shifting to other units in the orbiting web. Only hours after Turner's cryptic statement, the Pentagon sent a missile tracking system into orbit. It's a part of America's efforts to bolster its military presence in space. The timing was coincidental, of course, but it highlights growing fears of a space war. Russia, China, the US have been pushing to assert dominance in outer space. In fact, each of the superpowers is working to blind the others. According to Washington officials, if there is a space war, the first obvious threat would be an attack on its satellites. And any country at war would be crippled without telecommunications, geolocation, and surveillance systems in space. And the alarm comes for a reason. For decades now, Russia has been developing weapons that can basically destroy satellites in low Earth orbit. Let me back that up. In the year 2021, Russia tested a ground-launched missile against one of its own satellites in orbit. The test generated a cloud of debris that NASA said endangered the International Space Station and its crew. It could have even gone on to threaten other satellites as well. Russia's rising ability to station nuclear weapons in space could be the next scary frontier of warfare. The question is America prepared for it? Moving on to Ukraine for now. President Volodymyr Zelensky has signed a bill legalizing the medical use of cannabis into a law. It will come into effect 6 months from now. Is the war-torn country now looking to make money by selling weed? After being a hotspot of corruption and crime, does it plan to become a haven for drug addicts as well? According to Ukrainian lawmakers, legalizing cannabis is the need of the hour. They say more than 6 million people need medicine containing cannabis. This includes cancer patients, civilians with post-traumatic stress disorder, and wounded soldiers. The Ukrainian Health Ministry has also backed the legislation. It needs to produce a list of diseases and conditions for which medical cannabis would be prescribed. Producers basically would need special licenses for the cultivation and sale of cannabis. They will also be under 24-hour video surveillance accessible to the police, as the recreational use of the drug still remains banned. But seeing Ukraine's track record, is this really a wise decision? It is the most corrupt country in Europe, to the point that President Zelensky has gone on multiple firing sprees in the top brass while fighting a war against Russia. Is legalizing a drug really what it needs right now? Wouldn't it just add fuel to corruption, lead to more crimes perhaps? Who knows if cannabis will only be used for medicinal use? What if it becomes yet another avenue for corruption? Will Rishi Sunak be out of office this summer? The British Prime Minister is staring at some rather bitter reality. These are all kinds of problems Sunak is facing: political, economical, existential. Let's start with politics. Under Sunak's leadership, the Tories have lost 2 by-elections. Labour has picked Kingswood and Wellingborough from the Tories, and with that the Tories have lost a total of 8 seats in the Parliament. This is the highest loss, by the way, since John Major's government in the 1990s. Let's just speak about the economy now. Britain has entered a recession. The news broke early this week, remember. Britain's Office for National Statistics has said that the country's gross domestic product shrank 0.3% in the 4th quarter of 2023. The economy had already contracted 0.1% in quarter 3. Now, recession is defined as two successive quarters of negative growth. Britain falls into this category now. And the last time the UK entered recession was in the first half of 2020. The country's economy was battered by the Wuhan virus. When Sunak took charge in 2022, he promised to improve the state of the UK's economy. In fact, economy was one of his top 5 priorities. So what really happened? Here's what Sunak has to say. Let me quote him. Now we are not out of the woods yet, but across all the priorities that I set out, we are making progress. Inflation has been more than halves. The economy outperformed expectations last year. Debt is on track to fall. We've cut the number of illegal migrants coming by a 1/3, and we are making progress on the longest waits in NHS. And if we stick with that plan, I can give everyone the peace of mind that there is a better future for them, quote unquote. But the question is, who is buying this promise? If the voters did, the Labour would not have won 44.9% of the votes in Kingswood and almost 56% of the votes in Wellingborough. How did Prime Minister Sunak react to those results? Well, he played down the law, saying that midterm by-elections are, quote-unquote, always difficult for the incumbent government. Adding, the circumstances of these by-elections were, of course, particularly challenging. The Labour leader, Keir Starmer, on the other hand, said the election results show, and I'm quoting here, people are ready to put their faith in a changed Labour Party. What about Sunak? Some people in his own party are losing faith in the Prime Minister. The Conservatives feel that Sunak is out of touch with reality. The fact that Sunak is Britain's richest Prime Minister does not help. In fact, many Conservatives feel his wealth vis-à-vis the struggle of the ordinary people is disadvantageous to the party. So what do Conservatives plan to do about it? Some suggest that the by-election defeat could possibly get more Conservatives to demand the return of Boris Johnson. Former Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng recently said that Sunak should, quote-unquote, swallow some pride and bring back Johnson. What are the chances of that happening? Even if Sunak steps aside, will Johnson be willing to come back? Let me just tell you something very interesting here. It was Johnson who planted the seeds of this narrative, of his comeback in his farewell speech. The former Prime Minister likened himself to Cincinnatus. He was a Roman leader who is believed to have led the country on at least 2 occasions. The second time around, it was the people who called on Cincinnatus to come save the country during an emergency. You see where Johnson is actually going with that metaphor? He is eyeing a comeback. But Sunak insists that come the general election, it will be a choice between him and Keir Starmer. What do the bookies think? British bookies generally tend to understand the political wave and get things right. What are they saying at the moment then? As of early February, some bookies were betting against Sunak. They had placed their money on Kemi Badenoch replacing Sunak as the leader of the Conservative Party. Who is Kemi Badenoch? She is the Business and Trade Secretary of Britain. There has been a flare-up in the Taiwan Strait. 2 people have died. China has issued a strong message. What happens next is anybody's guess. The story begins on Wednesday, the 14th of February. A Chinese speedboat, we are being told, entered Taiwanese waters. There were 4 men on board the boat. They were reportedly fishermen. The boat entered the prohibited waters near Kinmen's bathing islet. It is home to a military post. The boat got very close to this islet. What happened next? The minute-to-minute details aren't clear, but we are being told that at one point, Taiwanese Coast Guard demanded that they inspect the boat. The fishermen on board did not agree, and this resulted in a chase. The Chinese boat capsized. All the 4 men fell into the water. Only 2 survived. Now here's what the Taiwanese Coast Guard has to say. Listen in.
As the speedboat was snaking, trying to evade inspection and even drifting, the speedboat capsized and the 4 people on board fell into the sea. And a patrol boat immediately launched a search and rescue, rescuing 4 mainland fishermen, 2 of whom survived and are currently undergoing questioning by the Coast Guard. The other 2 were rushed to the Kinmen Hospital for emergency treatment and were declared dead after first aid was unsuccessful.
The Taiwanese Coast Guard has released footage. It shows a person recovering one of the bodies. Now let's just look at where all of this was happening. Near Kinmen. Here's a map. Kinmen is just 3 kilometers from the Chinese coast. In other words, it's on the front line of tensions. And now you have a flare-up right here. You have 2 deaths. What happens next? China has called the incident wicked. Quite an interesting choice of word there. The Taiwan Affairs Office in China claiming that Taipei has been treating Chinese fishermen in a manner that is quote-unquote rough and dangerous. Then why are these so-called fishermen entering prohibited waters? Taiwan claims its Coast Guard was abiding by the law, and it was the Chinese crew that refused to cooperate. Earlier this week, Taiwan's defense ministry said that it detected 14 Chinese warplanes around Taiwan. What exactly were they doing there? Carrying out joint patrols with Chinese warships. There were J-16 fighters, drones. 9 of the 14 aircraft crossed the Taiwan Straits median line. Once upon a time, this line used to be the unofficial border between the two sides. But now, Chinese planes regularly fly over the median line. Just a quick reminder here that China sees Taiwan as a breakaway province, with the Chinese President Xi Jinping claiming that the mainland's reunification with Taiwan is inevitable. In fact, as recently as the 31st of January 2023, Xi Jinping said Taiwan and China will, quote-unquote, surely be reunified. Imagine this, you're at home, it's a lazy Sunday, you don't feel like cooking, and you're trying to cut down on the ordering in. So what do? You browse through your kitchen cabinet, looking for some ready-to-cook meal, and voila, there you see it, that cup of instant noodles. A convenient, quick fix as a snack, even as a meal, whether you're at home, at work, traveling, in the middle of nowhere, or just want a late-night snack. All you need is some hot water, a short wait for a few minutes, and your instant noodles are ready. And they come in a wide range of flavors, by the way. They are filling, tasty, most of all, convenient. Now, why am I talking about instant noodles tonight? The Hong Kong Consumer Council has tested 19 samples of pre-packaged instant noodles. And what did they find? First, the sodium content of one whole serving of all samples exceeded the recommended adult intake limit per meal for adults. And by the way, non-fried noodle samples that are considered healthier were no different. All the samples were found to have high sodium levels. First things first, why is high sodium an issue, you ask? Well, people have been advised not to consume too much sodium, warning that excessive intake could lead to greater health risks. Although the human body does require an appropriate amount of sodium to maintain body functions, excessive sodium intake over extended periods may adversely affect health and also increase the risk of cardiovascular and renal diseases. And that's not all. Nearly 90% of the samples, that's 17 samples, were found to contain probably carcinogenic contaminants. The council sourced 19 pre-packaged instant noodle samples from various retail outlets, and this included 14 fried and 5 non-fried samples. Possible carcinogens, 3-MCPD and glycidol, were detected in nearly 90% samples. Before I go further, what are 3-MCPD and glycidol? Why is their detection a cause of concern? Well, the International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified 3-MCPD as possibly carcinogenic to human beings. Now, if you have consumed these noodles, you would know what the process is like. The process of making fried instant noodles and seasonings generally involves high heat, also the use of refined fats and oils. And this may result in the production of a substance called 3-MCPDE and release the possibly carcinogenic 3-MCPD in the human body. Another contaminant also produced during the processing of refined fats and oils is glycidyl fatty acid esters, or GE. which breaks down during human digestion to release glycidol. And glycidol is classified as a group 2A substance that is probably carcinogenic to humans. Now, while no scientific research has found a link between instant noodles consumption and increased cancer risk, the Council has called on the industry to tighten the control over the quality of raw materials and the production process to reduce levels of both contaminants to protect consumer health. Basically, the Council has said that although normal consumption of these seasonings does not pose significant risks to the health of adults, it urges manufacturers to use ingredients with fewer contaminants to improve product safety and safeguard consumer health. But will that happen is the question. Also, the Council has made some suggestions. Let me tell you about some of them. To reduce sodium intake, do not use all accompanying seasonings and try not to consume the soup. Also, be mindful, pay attention to the food items served with instant noodles. This includes processed meat products like sausages, meatballs, etc., which are high in fat and sodium. Now, noodles will release some fat and sodium during the cooking process, so it is recommended to replace the cooking water with fresh hot water to slightly bring down the intake of fat and sodium. And people who need to control body weight, at risk of or suffering from chronic diseases like hypertension, cardiovascular or renal diseases are advised against consuming instant noodles regularly. People with acid reflux should avoid eating instant noodles late at night. Choose healthier, non-fried noodle items perhaps, like rice vermicelli, macaroni, buckwheat noodles. These are suggestions from the Council. And also mix them with fresh and nutrient-rich food items in order to diversify your daily diet. Have you heard of the term kill fee? Well, it's used to describe the tragedy that strikes when someone gets killed while taking a selfie. And why would someone do that, you ask? You know, go to that length just to capture a selfie. We are wondering the same. In a shocking case of one such case of a kill fee, a man was mauled to death by an Asiatic lion at a zoo in India's Andhra Pradesh. Let's tell you more. In Tirupati, the man entered the lion's enclosure at a zoo. Authorities have identified the man as Prahlad from the Indian state of Rajasthan. And the only reason he entered the big cat's enclosure, by the way, was to click a selfie, ignoring all the warnings from the zoo staff. Eyewitnesses claim to escape the lion's attack, Prahlad climbed a tree, but the lion managed to bite him on the neck, and that led to his death on the spot. According to initial reports, Prahlad was in a drunken state. Such incidents have become increasingly common in India. Earlier, several such videos surfaced online where people could be seen taking selfies at really dangerous spots. The most common among these incidents being reports of people going near water bodies to click selfies. During the Delhi floods, the Chief Minister had to address this through a tweet. In fact, data shows that this is a global problem. Between 2011 and 2017, almost 259 selfie deaths and accidents were reported around the world. Now, we are, of course, not telling you to stop taking selfies, but one should be careful at all times because nothing is more important than your own safety and well-being. It's fun to watch videos, be it reels on Instagram, YouTube videos or movies. After all, they are a great source of entertainment. While watching them does not take a lot of effort, creating them is often time-consuming. Making videos is tedious, also a complex process. But it seems that with advancement in technology, that could soon change. Creating videos could be as simple as typing a text message or writing an email. We are not exaggerating here, by the way. Artificial intelligence is making this possible. OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, is testing a text-to-video model. It's called Sora. The new AI tool will basically allow the users to create realistic videos with a simple prompt. You write a sentence and it will provide you with a corresponding video. Before we get into what all this tool can actually do, have a look at these videos that OpenAI's new AI system Sora has created using text prompts. This AI-generated video shows the beautiful and snowy, bustling Tokyo city. Here's another video. It features a woman who walks down a Tokyo street filled with warm, glowing neon and animated city signage. This one has an aerial view of the subject. It's a drone view of waves crashing against the rugged cliffs. This also has been created using artificial intelligence. Interestingly, OpenAI's new tool Sora can generate videos up to a minute long. It can generate complex scenes with multiple characters, specific types of motion, and with accurate details of the subject and the background. According to the Microsoft-backed company, it will maintain visual quality and adhere to the user's prompt. Apart from generating videos from text prompts, Sora can take an existing still image and generate a video from it as well. OpenAI is offering access to a limited number of creators during its testing phase. While this text-to-video model looks promising, it also has its share of weaknesses at this point in time. It gets confused between left and right. It fails to maintain visual continuity throughout the length of a video. Well, OpenAI is not the only company that is experimenting with this technology. Companies like Meta, Google, Runway AI are also working on text-to-video AI models. They have also released similar samples of their work. While this latest AI technology may make life easier for content creators, it also poses safety concerns, like text-to-video tools could be misused to produce inappropriate content in no time. They could be exploited to create hateful content, promote propaganda, and spread misinformation. Such tools are also likely to exaggerate social biases, including harmful ones, which means they can reinforce social prejudices, and therefore it's important to engage the policymakers, educators, artists around the world in designing this technology for public use. They can help deal with the concerns and also identify positive use cases for this new technology. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching. Have a good weekend. Good night.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch